Okay, so you have learned about the while loop in C, but there is another kind of loop which is also important to know about, and this is called the for loop. Now, it's very similar to the while loop, except that it requires that you have an initializer, which I'll explain in a minute. It has the condition, just as the while loop had, and you remember how if you did not increment a variable, something related to the condition in a while loop, that you would end up with an infinite loop? Well, the for loop has a place just for putting that increment, and you pretty much have to use it. So it's kind of a safety feature in C that makes sure that you write your loops the correct way. Now, you don't ever have to write a for loop if you don't want to, but you're definitely going to come across them, and they can be pretty handy. So when I talked about the switch, we said we typed switch, the while we typed while, the if we typed if. For this one, okay, it's the same. We type for, F-O-R, duh, and in parentheses, we're going to have three things. But first, we can, of course, have our braces that we always have. All right, the first thing we have is an initializer, and this is a variable that we create. It's kind of like the variable that we incremented last time. So, integer I, and we're going to set it to 0, and we're going to loop to 10, printing out the numbers. Just like last time we printed from 10 to 0, we're going to do the opposite here. So we've created a variable, an integer, and we've assigned it a value of 0. And we have to put a semicolon after it. And this first one is called the initializer. The second one is the condition, and it's the same thing that we learned about in the for loop. So our condition is while, just like we would have while I is less than 10, we just put I less than 10, and we need another semicolon. And now we have the update spot where we're going to update that I variable. And as you know, since we're decrementing, well, in decrementing you would say I minus minus. Since we're incrementing, we would have I plus plus. And we're going to have code that prints out I with a new line after it to make this more readable. Alright, so that's the code. Now, before it runs this code here, it's going to set I equal to 0, and then it's going to make this test. If this test is true, it's going to run this code, update I, and then make the test again. It's going to keep making the test, running the code, updating I until this test evaluates to false. And that'll be when I gets to 10. Alright, so let's run this code and see it in action. And apparently I made a mistake here. Alright, the mistake that I made is that I'm really used to programming in C++. In C, you cannot completely initialize a variable inside of a for loop. Instead, you have to create the variable outside, int I, and set I equal to 0 inside of it. So here we have to create the variable outside of the for loop and give it a value inside, and this will work. Now we run the code, and it prints out 0 through 9. And of course, it does not ever get to 10, because the last evaluation is when I is equal to 10. It checks to see if I is less than 10. And of course, 10 is not less than 10, so it does not run this code. So the last one it prints out is when I is 9. So that is the for loop. And there is one difference between, or one more difference between the for loop and the while loop here. That is, I told you that you had to have an initializer here. Well, the truth is you don't actually have to have one. If you've already initialized your variable outside, you can delete it and have just a semicolon, and that will work. And that's actually true for all of these other ones, for the condition and for the update. So you can get rid of this update and just have a blank semicolon. And if we do it like this, we have no update here, and we have no initializer because we've done it here. And this means we're going to have an increment inside of the body of our loop. And this should have the same result. And it does. Now, you won't see this very often, but in case you do, you'll know what it means. Alright, so that is how you use the for loop. It's basically the same as a while loop, except it has a couple of things that it suggests that you do, such as initializing and updating, and it can sometimes make your code more safe so that you won't end up with an infinite loop like you did when we created the while loop last time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.